So we've been journeying together for the past several weeks through the Gospel of John, looking at the legend of Jesus in our series, 33 AD. And we now arrive at John chapter 14. And Jesus begins to have a conversation about a home, a place that he knew somehow would connect to the deepest part of who his followers were at their very core, what they longed for. Have you ever noticed how all of us long for a place called home? There's just this wonderful feeling when you get home and you have a place that's yours, or that's safe, or that's secure, or that's familiar to you. And ironically, growing up, there was at least twice in my life where my family moved and they didn't tell me where they moved. I'm not sure what that says about my relationship with my family, but the first time I was in college and my mom moved to Orlando with our sisters, and she told me she was in Orlando, but she didn't have an address. So I remember driving from school down to Orlando, going to a payphone at a gas station. Yes, there were payphones, and this is not just a mythology. And long before cell phones, and I remember putting my quarter in, calling this number and asking my mom, where do I live? And where is home? It was the strangest sensation to not know where home was. But I remember another time, years later, Kim and I were married, and we were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We were driving across the country to Orlando. My mom moved again. She kept moving our home. And she didn't tell us exactly where it was. She just gave us a general vicinity. And when we got there, we were supposed to call her. But our trip took longer than we thought. It was now going to the night, and it was dark. My mom goes to sleep earlier. And we couldn't get a hold of her. And we're driving through this area. We'd never been there in our entire lives. And I just choose to turn on a street. And Kim's like, you don't know where you're going. Let's just get a hotel. It's late. We're tired. And then I took a left at another street. I said, let me just go down this way. And I didn't want to turn around because that would have been an admission of failure. And I just kept driving and driving, thinking, maybe I'll find this house. Somehow I'll find this. I have no idea what street it is, what address it is, but I'm going to find this house. And I remember I'm driving. Kim and I are arguing about it. And eventually she wins. And so I said, all right, let me just turn around. And I pull into a driveway. Do you remember this? I pull into a driveway just to turn around. And I noticed there's a car there. And it looks like the car that my mom said she owned. And I literally, exactly pulled into the house that was our home, having no idea where it was. And to this day, and she's right here, and she would stand up and call me a liar if it wasn't true. Somehow I think that we have an instinct to where our home is. It's even the same feeling with family. You ever notice how when we say the word family, it's supposed to create warm feelings? Because our family is supposed to be our families are home. They're the people that we can go to, that we can trust, that are loyal, that we're connected to, that they understand us. Who has a family like that? I don't know anyone who has a family like that. In fact, when we talk about family, going, whose family are you talking about? Because most of us, when we go home, our families are so dysfunctional and so broken, and you go back to being the worst person you ever were. And Thanksgiving and Christmas are just, it's like guerrilla warfare. And yet we have this whole language around home and family that is really more of nostalgia of an experience we've never had, or a hope of something all of us long for and can't seem to find. And so in John chapter 14, Jesus uses this kind of description. Beginning in verse 1, Jesus says, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going. So how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him, and you have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Jesus answered, don't you know me, Philip? Even after I have been among you such a long time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and that the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves. Jesus begins to sense that there's turmoil, disruption among those who were closest to him. He begins by saying, do not let your hearts be troubled. And he would not have started there if their hearts were not troubled. And you can imagine having placed all your confidence, all your hope, all your dreams, all your faith in this person called Jesus. And he seems to be either unaware or disconnected to the reality that things are getting bad, that they're getting tense and violence is swirling all around them. And if Jesus doesn't change his course, things are going to end very badly for him and for anyone associated with him. And they couldn't seem to convince Jesus to make even the slightest amount of course correction. Because if Jesus could have just changed his message a little bit, he would have been accepted. But he would not. If he could have just hedged a little bit or compromised a little bit about who he was or what his intention was, it wouldn't have come to this. But Jesus seemed to be singular in his focus, and he could not change his course, and his disciples understood this was about to come to an explosive end, and they're scared. They don't know if following him was worth the price they were about to pay. And so he tells them, do not be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. And Jesus is calling them in this moment to put all of their confidence and all their trust in him. And then he addresses the unspoken dilemma in the moment. He says, my Father's house has many rooms. By the way, that can be translated my Father's mansion, for those of you who want an upgrade. My Father's house has many rooms, and if that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. Now, you need to realize that in this moment, Jesus is speaking to something that is a commonly held belief. They believed in an afterlife. They hoped that there would be life after death. They hoped there was a place that we would describe as heaven. And so now Jesus says to them, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. And he's using this as a metaphor of life everlasting, of life after death, which is not that encouraging. He's saying you're exactly right in measuring the risk we're about to step into. You're exactly right when you measure the sacrifice that's about to take place. But I want you to know that I've got plans after it all. That's not that exciting. They go, don't worry, we're all going to die, but it's going to be okay. And he begins to describe this beautiful space of many rooms, of endless space. He says that I'm going to prepare this place for you, but no, and if it were not so, I would not tell you, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to bring you there. But this moment is creating so much tension for them. And if you examine the core of every religion in the world, it's always about how do you get to where you need to go? How do you get to God? If it's Buddhism, it's how do you get to enlightenment? It's Islam, it's how do you get God's favor? Christianity, it's always about how do you get forgiveness? How do you get to heaven? How do you get to nirvana? How do you get to enlightenment? How do you get to peace? And in this moment, Jesus is painting a picture of a future that can pull them through the present. And I want you to be aware of something very specific about this. Jesus understands that they will not have the courage or strength to make it through this moment if they're not convinced there's something beyond this moment to live for. It's not what you're going through right now that will crush you. It's not the crisis or the challenges or the problems. All the pressure in your life will not be what crushes you. It's the belief that there is no moment better after that will crush you. As long as you believe that there's a tomorrow, you can make it through today. As long as you believe there's light coming, you can make it through any darkness. As long as you believe there's hope and a future, you can make it through any moment of despair in the present. It's when you stop believing that there's something yet to come that life becomes overwhelming. That's when you wonder if you can make it. That's when you wonder if you can take one more step. That's when you wonder if you can take one more breath. And so Jesus is pulling them to a future hope. But it's not what they thought. Because it looked as if Jesus was letting them know there's a place. There's a place that I promise you, and I'm going to prepare it, and I'm going to take you there. But the way Jesus moves us is so subtly. He always begins to talk to us about what we know we believe we need. And then he starts there and he moves us to what he knows we actually need. And if he started us where he knows we need to go, we wouldn't go there with him because, no, I need this, God. And guys, no, actually what you need is this. And if God tries to convince you, you need this, you go, no, you're not taking care of my basic needs. So he begins by saying, I have a place for you, but it's really not a place. I want you to notice what Jesus does in this moment because, you ever just get frustrated because someone else got a job that you deserved? That's just a little side note. You know, especially here in LA, right? You ever get frustrated someone else got the part that you know you were better than them, but they got it anyway? Because you know it's not what you know, it's who you know. Because you know you're more talented than Tom Hardy. You know you are. You know you're more talented than Leo. I mean, what does Leo have that you don't have? And you know, Scarlett Johansson is just where she's at because she knows someone you don't know. You all know. And you know what's really frustrating? There's a lot of truth to that. You know why? Because it is so true in life that there's so many people who are equally talented. It's not that they're not talented. It's not that you're not talented. It's that if there's equal talent, it's not about what you know. It is about who you know. And what's really fascinating is that Jesus doesn't fix this for us. He just makes it worse. Because Jesus wants us to know it's not about what you do. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know. Because in verse 3, he says, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. See, they're so fixated on this house with many rooms, this mansion with many rooms, but Jesus is actually saying to them, what I'm actually trying to do is not take you to a place, I'm trying to take you to a person. I want you to be where I am. What do you do when you realize the place you've been looking for is actually a person? Now that phrase, I am, is significant. It's the phrase that God uses when he confronts Moses at the burning bush. And he tells Moses, I'm going to completely redirect your life. I'm just throw your life upside down. You're going to go back, deliver my people out of the hands of the Egyptians. You're going to become their deliverer. Moses, I'm calling you out. And Moses says, well, who do I tell them sent me? God, could you give me your business card? I need your vita, your bio. I need to know why you're important. And God says to him, I am that I am. It's the same phrase where we get the name of God. Which is a little confusing, by the way. I am that I am. That's not a great reference if you're a God. Or even if you're God. Because you see, in that time, every god had their specialty. There are some gods who were like the goddess of fertility. And she's done really well. And there are gods, gods of war, and they've done very well. And there are gods that are sometimes over specific human activity or human emotion. Sometimes there are gods who are over certain spaces, like the god of the oceans, the god of the skies, the sun god, the moon god. And so gods had a very specific role. And when you went to war, it was your God against their God. And so you had to know the name of your God, because then you know which God was bigger than the other God. And you need to know what that God was good at. If it's the rain God, don't ask the rain God for sunshine. You ask the rain God for rain. Every God has their specific skill. And then you ask God, when you're Moses, who do I tell him you are? It would have been great if he had said, I am the God of war. I'm down for that. Let's go, right? I am the God of deliverance. I am the God over this territory. So anything you do in this territory that I tell you to do will succeed. But God instead says, I am that I am. In other words, he says, my only qualification is who I am. What does that mean? How does that help? In a world of gods that wield fire and water, in a world of gods that rule over territories and oceans and universes and planets, how can a God who's only known by his essence be more powerful than all those gods? And here Jesus says, I am doing this to take you to be with me so that you also may be where I am. In other words, all the things you've ever looked for in anything else, in anyone else, in any other God or any other place, I am the source of all that is good. I am the source of all of life. I am the source of everything your soul has ever longed for. You need to be where I am. Now, people have asked me for years, and why don't you talk so much about heaven? And I really don't talk very much about heaven. I don't find it to be that interesting. And I know it's terrible. I'm supposed to say, oh, I'm fascinated with heaven, but I'm really not. And I always think it's always kind of odd that so many Christians are just fascinated with heaven. And I think it's because they're really, really uninterested in life. And I find that what happens is that many people of faith use heaven as an escape hatch from the realities of life. And so you can endure this life as long as there's a heaven. In fact, I remember over 40 years ago when I first started encountering people who believed in Jesus. I'm sure I've met many people before that, but I didn't know they believed in Jesus since they never mentioned him. But now I had a bunch of people who felt obligated to talk to me about God and to try to convince me that he was real and that Jesus was his name. And it just seemed like they were everywhere. And yet one of the questions they would always ask me is, Erwin, if you died tonight, do you know for certain you'll go to heaven? I thought, wow, you're a really dark person. I was like, why would you even bring that up? Like, you're going to mess up my sleep patterns. It's already hard enough for me to sleep. And if I died tonight, I was like, do you know something I don't know? It's like, and do you know if you died tonight, you'd be in heaven? And that's not my greatest fear. My greatest fear was not if I died that night, would I go to heaven? My greatest fear is that I would not die that night, would wake up the next day and have to deal with life. It was far more terrifying to think about the fact I would have to wake up over and over and over and over and over and over again and have no idea what life was all about. That was far more terrifying to me than what happened to me when I died. I wondered what was going to happen to me before I died. And if I couldn't find a God who could help me before my death, why would I ever trust him with my life after my death? And Jesus says, you have a logistical problem. You keep thinking that the answer to your questions, the answer to your problems is a place. Whether it's a place called home or a place called heaven. And Jesus says, my entire goal is to get you to where I am. That would tell us so much about heaven. Maybe our goal isn't to get to heaven, but to get heaven to us. And then Jesus goes on. It's so frustrating when Jesus says things as if we're supposed to know. He goes on in verse 4, you know the way to the place where I am going. And that's why I'm so grateful for Thomas. Thomas asked the questions all of us are wondering, right? And Thomas said to Jesus, Lord, we don't know. We don't know where you are going. So how can we know the way? See, here's the dilemma. It's like we're lost on both ends, Jesus. We don't know where we're going, and so we don't know the way. So it would be really helpful for us who are slower in the back of the room if you could clarify all of it. And then Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. That statement has echoed throughout history. It's one of the few statements, if you knew nothing about anything Jesus ever said, that statement has probably found its way to you somehow. And Jesus is speaking to the very core of our human existence. It's this, he's taking apart our nostalgia, our mythology, this idea that there's a place called home. And so Jesus paints this picture of a home that God's creating for us. And he's taking this image of family and that all of us know should be this safe, beautiful, extraordinary, intimate community, but that we've all wondered where it's at. And now Jesus says, I want you to understand something. What you're searching for is not a place, it's a person. I am the way, and I am the truth, and I am the life. And here Jesus, over and over again, declares what God spoke to Moses, I am. It's the essence of me that you're searching for. And he speaks to the very core of everything. I am the way. And it's fascinating to me how 2,000 years later, we're still asking the same questions. So the reason we don't know the way is we don't have any purpose for our lives, or we don't understand what our purpose for existing is. And we're going, I don't know where I'm going. It's crazy how fast you can go someplace you don't even know. And you spend your life wandering. Have you ever had that terrifying thought, am I just wandering through life? Am I here on purpose or am I here by accident? And it was the same thing at this business event a few months ago where this one person asked the question in the Q&A, how do you not lose your purpose when you lose your business? How, when you lose everything, can you avoid from losing your purpose? And I said, well, the problem is that if your purpose is your business, it's vulnerable. As long as your purpose is something you can lose, it's fragile and in danger. Your purpose should not be something you do. It should be something you are. But if your purpose is who you're becoming, nobody but nothing can touch your purpose because they can't touch that. And Jesus saying, I am your purpose. I am what will keep you from wandering. I am the way. And he's not the way to somewhere in particular. He's the way in someone in particular. That's why so many times, even when people believe so deeply in God, they go, well, I just want to know what God's will is for my life. I just see people floundering all the time. I don't know what God's will is for my life. And it's because we still keep thinking that God is trying to show us the way rather than be the way. See, God's purpose for your life is about you becoming everything God created you to become. And let what you do come out of who you are. And let who you are come out of who he is in relationship to you. You don't ever have to be lost again. You can know your way because your way is not a place, but a person. He says that I am the truth. As much as he knows we're always going to be asking the question, where am I going? What's my purpose? He knows we're always going to be asking, why am I here? What's my meaning? And the same way you can feel like you're wandering throughout your life because you don't have your way, you can feel as if you're just wasting your life because you don't have your meaning. It's so hard to put your meaning in meaningless things. Actually, I should say it the other way around. It's so easy to try to find your meaning in meaningless things, isn't it? It's amazing how we can just lie to ourselves and go, oh, my meaning is success, or my meaning is fame, or my meaning is relationships or people or pleasure. My relationships is stuff. Whenever you make anything outside of you your meaning, it just starts feeling so meaningless. I can make you a promise, no matter how much money you will ever make, money will never give you meaning. In fact, money will haunt you in the dark because you will have so much of it and you will still have a meaningless life. And you wonder, why can't I buy my meaning? And some of us are convinced that if you can just become famous enough, if enough people can know you, then you'll have meaning. And yet, the more people know you, the more you feel unknown. I'm telling you, the more famous you become, the more you will ever wonder if anyone will ever know you for who you really are. Whenever you try to find your meaning in the things that you do or accomplish or have, it'll make life feel so meaningless and you'll have wasted your life. He says, I am the way and the truth. And here's the beautiful thing about truth. In fact, have you ever met someone who says there's just no truth? The reason we come to believe there's no truth is that we conclude that no one can be trusted. Because for truth to exist, someone has to be trustworthy. And the only reason truth exists is because God can be trusted. I've thought so many things in my life that I changed my mind on. Things I thought I was so right about, and I was so wrong. In fact, I try to hold truth with an open hand, knowing I'm such a flawed human being that I can make so many mistakes. But I want you to understand, holding on to Jesus is not holding on to an idea or holding on to a belief. See, the truth that I have in Jesus is not based on some kind of empirical evidence. The truth I have in Jesus is based on learning that God can be trusted and that Jesus can be trusted with my life. And the truth in the end is relational. It can be found in the one that can be trusted in your life. And then he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, which, by the way, that life thing, it's so elusive. It's hard to give someone something that they think they already have. I think this is why this is the most difficult thing, is that when you tell someone that Jesus will give you life, not only will Jesus give you life, but Jesus is life. I mean, your first thought is, I'm already alive. I don't know if I have enough room for two lives inside of one body. But the truth is you have so much room for life because what you have is existence without God. And you know it. You feel it. I had this new friend come up to me the other day. He actually asked me to meet so we could talk about God. I think it's so great when someone makes an appointment to talk about God. I think it's a beautiful thing. And he's in the movie industry. I would have loved meeting about movies. But he wanted to talk about God. He said, there's just something missing. He kept saying, there's just something missing. It's actually so wonderful when someone's already completely self-aware that as long as they've lived their life and as much as they've accomplished, there's still something missing. And Jesus calls that life because we have this longing for connection, this longing for intimacy. When Jesus says, I'm the way and the truth and the life, what he's telling us is that he is the oxygen of our souls. He's trying to help us move to this realization that everything you've been searching for, that place you've been searching for, is a person. And then Jesus says something that I've always had a really hard time with. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's actually a really hard statement for me just to say because it sounds so exclusive, not inclusive. And I'm an incredibly inclusive person. I always want to use inclusive language. I want to make sure that there's room for everyone. Everyone knows they belong. Everyone knows they're accepted. Everyone knows that there's a place for them. And when Jesus is in, and no one comes to the Father except through me. When I first read that, I thought, wow, that's pretty tight. That's a very small, narrow space, and it's sort of suffocating just from the thought of it, Jesus. And it took me a little while to understand what Jesus was saying. See, what Jesus was not saying is that I am so jealous and so narrow-minded and so elitist that I want to make sure that there's no other way for you. What he's saying to you is that no one else is coming for you. See, it's not that I don't want there to be other ways, that there just is no other way. No one is coming for you. And I remember when I studied religions and philosophies and I kept listening to the narrative, it was always about this is what you need to do to get to God. This is what you need to do to get to enlightenment. This is what you need to do to get to forgiveness. This is what you need to do to get good enough. And every religion had a system that said this is what you need to do. And Jesus is saying they're not coming for you. They're trying to force you to get to them. The only person who has ever said you don't have to do anything to get to me because I will do everything to get to you is Jesus. I follow Instagram and you ever just notice like one thing pops up, there's like 500 of them, just like it's the strangest thing. And so this person came up and they were yelling. And they said, and this is the business, like little business clip, "No one is coming for you." And then I noticed like 87 other people were saying the same thing. "No one is coming for you. No one is coming for you." In other words, you got to do it for yourself. No one is coming for you. Well, I understand that. I know I have had that feeling. Have you? In fact, yesterday, Kim and I went over to see Mariah and Juno, and so she drove, and I decided to walk to get my steps in. So I walked, and it got hot, took off my hoodie, but I forgot I had this iPod, or is it AirPods? Things you put in your ears? You know, AirPods. So I had my AirPods in my ears, but I had the case hanging around my neck on another case. And when I took off the hoodie, I didn't realize I dropped it somewhere. When I got to Mariah's house, I had the pods in my ears, but I was missing the case and nice little container that holds it, and I was determined to find it. Now, I could buy another one, but I don't know why. Just losing it just really upset me. And so I drove back trying to find it, couldn't see it. And when I got to the house, I have this little bike called a Super 73. It's like an electric bike. It moves pretty quick. It's really fun. I hadn't used it in a year because it's been so cold. So I jumped on it, took off down the street. I'm going to go find my AirPods. And I'm crossing 3rd Street. It was a pretty busy street. And I realized, oh, no, I came up the sidewalk, so I took a hard left to get to the sidewalk, and my bike just skidded out. And I just went skidding down the street and stopped right in the middle of 3rd with all the traffic coming. It was painful. And I saw a car coming, and it came right at me and went around me. Didn't stop. Didn't want to, and I'm not ungrateful. I'm grateful he did not run me over. And but I thought, well, you could have stopped to see if I was alive. But at least you could have stopped to block the rest of the cars from like running me over, right? You know? And I'm laying on the ground, and I'm thinking to myself, ow. I'm in a lot of pain. I think I'm damaged. And then I saw cars coming. I thought, oh, I'll be more damaged if they run me over. So you ever been in so much pain you didn't feel like you could move? But then you realized the consequence of not moving was going to be the result of greater pain. And so I got myself up really fast and pulled up my bike and checked to see if it was scratched. It was not, so it was okay. The bike was fine. I was not. And I got on the bike, and then I took off. And while I'm laying there, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I can get up. I don't know if I can get up. And then I saw the cars, I can get up. I can get up. And it's almost like this voice in your head going, no one is coming for you. I did keep going, and I did find my case. And so I just want to tell you that. But I think most of life, when we've really blown it, when we've damaged our lives, when we've made terrible choices, when we've crashed and burned, and we feel the blunt force trauma of all of our stupidity, and we feel the loneliness, and we feel the shame, we feel the bitterness, we feel the hurt, the disappointment. I think there's a lot of times the wind's just knocked out of us wondering, is anyone coming for me? I think most of the times in life, you just feel like I just got to get myself back up because no one's going to help me through this. And when Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me, what Jesus is saying to you is, I know it's going to be hard to trust me because you've believed in other gods and they did not come through. You've believed in religion and it did not come through. You may have believed in people and they did not come through. But I want you to understand that I'm the one who comes through. And no one comes to the Father except by me, because I'm the only one willing to do what must be done to bring you the hope and the life and the forgiveness and the joy that your soul desperately longs for. See, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus allowed himself to be crucified on our behalf, when he took on the brutality of that cross on our behalf, when he allowed his body to be broken and his blood to be shed on that cross on our behalf, he wanted us to know no one else would do this for you. and no one else is coming for you. But I will not leave you alone. I've come for you, but you must choose to receive what only I can give to you. And he looks at his disciples and he says to them, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Don't ever say you don't know who God is if you've looked at me, Jesus says. Because I have come for you. The great thing about who Jesus is it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you know, what you've accomplished, where you've been, or how bad you've messed up. He's just made it so simple. It's just about who you know. And Jesus says, my whole goal is to take you where I am. And the moment you're in a relationship with Jesus, you will be, from that moment and for all of eternity, where God is. Heaven does not begin the moment you die and step into eternity. Heaven begins the moment you allow Jesus to fill the space in your soul. The moment you connect to him, you realize, oh, what I've been searching for all along has always been a person who could love me without condition. Would you just bow your heads with me just for a moment? The place you've been searching for is a person. His name is Jesus. The life you've been looking for is a person. His name is Jesus. The hope you've been looking for, it's a person. His name is Jesus. Everything your soul has ever longed for is a person. And his name is Jesus. But it's an all-in proposition. You can't give him just a part of you. It has to be all of you. You can't want just a part of him. It has to be all of him. But the moment you're ready to cross the line of faith, the moment you're ready to say, Jesus, I'm all in, the moment you're ready to give all of yourself to him and receive all of himself in you, that's the moment everything will change. If you're ready to trust Jesus with your life, to receive his forgiveness, to receive his freedom, to receive his life in you right now, I just want you to pray this simple prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. Just tell him right now. Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. This is where it begins. Eternity is not a place, it's a person. Heaven is not a place, it's a person. It's Jesus who makes heaven heaven. If you're here in this moment and you prayed, Jesus, I give you my life, I want you to raise your hand right now quickly, without any embarrassment or shame, no hesitation. If in this moment you're praying, Jesus, I give you my life right now, just hold your hand up high. I want to pray for you. Beautiful. Beautiful all around the room. Father, I pray that you would become the overwhelming reality in their life in this moment. I pray, Jesus, that you would become the sum total of everything their soul has ever longed for, and that you would become the fulfillment of that in this moment. That you would wrap them up in your love and let them know they belong to you, that you will never leave them or abandon them. I pray, God, that today would be the beginning of eternity for them, that today they would change their location where they are now, heaven on earth in them. I thank you, Father. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Let's just thank God for all those who responded to him right now. So good. So good. Before Pastors Joe and Beck come back up here, I just want to remind you, next week is Easter. Next week, for some reason, everyone who doesn't believe in God is willing to go to church. All right. And next week, everyone who's forgotten about Sunday will remember it. And most of the time, there's one factor that will determine whether someone will show up on Easter or not. Someone invited them. So this week, go crazy. Invite everyone you know to come next Sunday to Mosaic, to come to church, celebrate on Easter. And some of you, your friends will go, you go to church? That'll be a great experience for you. And when you invite them, for them to discover you've actually been before and you survived. Let's just pack this place out. And by the way, parking is going to be insane. I saw a lot of you guys. You came in like after 12:15, 12:20, 12:30, 12:45. I mean, I'm sorry you had to wake up so early. All right, and I know it's brutal, okay? I'm asking you for one Sunday to show up early so that when we have thousands of people who never show up, they're not confused. And be here, welcome people, bring your friends, get coffee. Coffee shops open way earlier, all right, than 11:45. You can do it. And let's get here and let's celebrate together. Love you guys. Pastor Joe, you got it.